away, will you, Jane?
Oh, she's always doing that.
What's the baby crying about, Pop?
He's hungry. Mother's giving him his bottle.
I'm hungry too. I want to eat. I want to eat.
Well, dinner isn't ready yet, Rose. You'll have to wait like we all do.
Why can't baby wait like we do? Oh, he hardly knows we exist. He can't worry about doing things with us. He doesn't know what trains are.
Now, Rose knows a lot more than baby brother. She knows what trains are, but she doesn't know how to run them.
You're not much better at our games. Lots of times you don't even know the rules. Why do we have so many rules, Daddy? Even ones you don't know.
Too many rules.
Well, sometimes we do have rules we don't need. But for everything we do together, we have to have some rules.
Well, we don't always have rules.
Sure, sometimes we just go ahead and play.
Well, sometimes it seems like that, Tom. But that wasn't so in that game of hide and seek we had with your friends.
Oh, that funny game?
Yeah, that funny game. Having a way to do things means having a rule. And we had to have a way of choosing someone to be it. We only had fun playing together when we all followed the same rules. All except Rose. She's too young to understand the rules, so we had to let her play as she pleased. Rules are just ways of doing things together. It's when we understand rules and agree to them that we have the most fun. That's why when Tom tried to help me, he was spoiling the game for Ronnie, and for the rest of us, too. We told him if he wanted to play, he had to stick to the rules we all agreed on. So you see, we didn't just go ahead and play. We had to follow the rules of the game. Of course, there's more to playing the game than just following the rules. Sometimes we had to make up new rules for new situations. We found that out when Ronnie tricked me into thinking someone was near the garage. The joke was on me, and I thought it was pretty clever. But your friend who was caught didn't think so. Everyone had his own opinion, and we couldn't agree. Some of us thought it was a fair trick at first. After talking it over, though, we all agreed it wouldn't be fair to anyone who was hiding where the stone fell. So we made a new rule, that we couldn't throw stones. And sometimes we have to change our old rules. You remember how angry you got, Tom, when Jane ran into the street. We had a rule against it because cars going by made it dangerous. Jane said we didn't need that rule because the street was closed and there were no cars. She said the rule was good when the street was open, but when things change, the rules have to be changed to fit. When when we saw it was safe to run there, we agreed with Jane. We knew we could change the rule as long as the street was closed. Only Rose kept insisting that we couldn't change rules. That's because she's too young to understand. People who understand rules know that they can change them. You see, when we play, it may seem as if we're just running around, but in games or anything else we do with other people, we have to agree on rules and understand them. We have to make new rules for new situations, and we have to change old rules when they aren't good anymore.
That's all there is. That's all there is.
Silly.
In the game, we needed lots of rules in order to play. As we grow older, we don't just run our own ways.
Sure, we can't have games without rules. But why do we have rules about so many other things?
The same reason we have rules in games, so we can get things done.
It's something like this locomotive needing a track. A rule is a kind of a track to get us someplace.
Well, in some ways. We have safety rules for getting across the street, and they help us get where we want to go, just like tracks help a train. We have to have laws so we can all get where we want to go. Like stopping for a red light to let others pass. We agree on ways of doing things together that will be fair to all of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't get anywhere. Yes, Tommy, a rule is a kind of a track to help us get where we want to go. But people aren't trains. People make the tracks they follow. And the laws we make are just like the rules you made in the game. We hadn't agreed on what to do about throwing stones. And the game couldn't go on until we did agree. When we all had our say, we were able to find a way that would be fair to everyone. That's the way we get good rules and good laws. Do you remember the traffic jams we used to have on Charles Street? Our town was growing fast. So much traffic was going in different directions that there was always a jam. Sometimes it would take forever to get through town. Well, we people had to do something about it. And just like you got together in the game, we got together at a town meeting and said what we thought should be done. Mr. Harris thought we could have a policeman at the corner. A lot of us disagreed. And just like in the game, it's only when we get up and talk that our interests are represented. Mr. Johnson suggested we make a rule that traffic could go only one way on Charles Street. After he finished talking, we voted. And most of us agreed with Mr. Johnson. Well, we made Charles Street a one-way street and cleared the traffic. You see, laws are the rules that people make and then live by. And we all want to have a say about how we live. All over the country, we live in different ways and work at different jobs. We have our own needs and our own problems. There are too many thousands and millions of us to go to a meeting. So in order to make sure that we can all have our say, we have the right to vote for representatives, people who will speak up for us. We send them to Congress to make the laws we want. I remember when the river used to flood its banks every spring. A lot of people lost their homes. Everybody nearby did what he could. But that didn't stop the river. For 1,000 miles in a dozen states, it flooded the countryside. The job was too big for cities or even whole states. Congress had to do something about it. Through our representatives, we decided that what we needed was a series of dams to hold back the waters. That took a lot of planning, because we had to figure out what was best for all the people living by the river in all the states. Well, we built the dams and the river was tamed. People needed the dams and they made laws to get them. We know that laws don't come from nowhere. People have to make them for themselves, as we do in Congress or in our town meetings, and as you do in your games. That's why we have to change laws, the same way you had to change the rules in the game. The rules don't change by themselves. When the street was closed, you had to change the rules to fit. And people have to change laws so they'll fit. For instance, a long time ago, our town was peaceful and the air was clean. We had a law that factories with big smoky chimneys had to be built on the other side of the river, so the dirt and soot wouldn't get to the town. That worked for a while, but as time passed, more factories came, and more, and even more, until finally the air wasn't fit to breathe. The old law wasn't good anymore, so we changed it. We made a law against letting chimneys pour out dirt and dust-laden smoke. We had to change the old law and make a new one, so we could live a better life in a cleaner city. In the old days, things were a lot different. Because life was simpler, laws were simpler. But today, we need different laws for different conditions.
I want to make laws. I want to make laws.
Yes, why can't we change laws? Everyone tells us what to do.
Well, that's because when we're young, we don't understand enough of what we need and of what other people need. And things you do understand, you do make the rules, like in the game, and I follow. When you're grown up, you'll have a share in making laws.
And we'll probably change a lot of them.
Well, if you speak up for your own needs and understand other people's rights, you'll make good laws.
One sunny day, Otto the Auto decided to go to the park. The grass was just beginning to peek out of the ground, and Otto was anxious to see the first signs of spring. Otto drove on the road through the park, smiling and twinkling in the sun. Suddenly, something dropped from nowhere and fell right on Otto's head. It was a nut. Otto was very surprised. Then Otto saw a little head peering out from a hole in a tree. It was Squeaky the Squirrel. Squeaky! That nut hit me right on the head. I know you're sorry, Squeaky, but where are all the boys and girls? Usually they're here after school on their way to the playground. You don't know where they are? I'll bet you're lonesome with no one to play with, aren't you? Let's go and find them, Squeaky. So, Otto and Squeaky drove up one street and down the other, up another street and down still another. Squeaky, you're so excited. I don't really think the children have disappeared. They must be around here somewhere. We only have one more block to search. They turned the corner, and did Squeaky and Otto get a surprise. There were all the children in the neighborhood, standing on the sidewalk with their bats and balls and roller skates, not playing at all. Otto drove to them, but the boys and girls were so busy talking, they didn't even see him. He honked his horn. Squeaky jumped into the air, chattering so fast Otto couldn't understand a word he said. I'm sorry I frightened you, Squeaky. I promise I'll try to warn you next time.
Hi, Otto. Hi, Squeaky.
Oh, Squeaky, you're so excited the words are all mixed up. What happened, boys and girls? We waited for you to go to the playground, and when you didn't come along, we hunted for you.
Well, Otto, my name is Barbara, and I'm new here. I want all my friends to play here with me, but they say they want to go to the playground. You see, Otto, where I used to live, we didn't have a playground near our house, so we played in the street.
In the street? But, Barbara, don't you know what could happen if you play in or near the street? Just then, Barbara dropped her red ball, and it rolled right out into the middle of the street. Before Otto could say another word, Barbara ran after her ball. Barbara was upset because she really had a close call. Everyone went to see how she was. Then they all heard Squeaky chattering in his high voice. They looked around, and there was poor Squeaky, shaking from head to tail with his paws over his eyes. Otto's horn had really frightened him this time.
Why, poor Squeaky, he's frightened.
I'm sorry, Squeaky, but it's better to be scared than to have Barbara hit by a car, isn't it?
You won't have to be frightened again, Squeaky. I'll go to the playground to play from now on. And I'm going to write letters to all my old friends and tell them to go to the playground, too.
We'll help you. We can each write one letter.
Otto was very pleased, and so was Squeaky.
Come on, let's go to the playground. Come on, Squeaky. You come and play with us.
Now, I want to play in the playground.
Now all the boys and girls will play away from traffic. One sunny morning, Otto the Auto met Peter the Pigeon returning from his vacation in Mexico. Peter was wearing a big sombrero he had brought back. They rode along having a fine time when Peter the Pigeon started hopping about the seat. His wings were getting tired of resting. Otto had a good idea. Peter, your wings need flapping. Fly on ahead and wait for me on a faraway tree. Peter the Pigeon flew off, but suddenly, Otto saw something surprising. Peter, in his big sombrero, was back again as fast as he could flap his wings. Uh-oh, something is wrong. Otto, not far ahead, I saw children walking on the wrong side of the road. If you drive on, they won't even see you coming. Some of them may get hurt. That's hard to believe. Hard to believe. Don't all children know you have to walk on the left side of the road facing traffic so you can see when cars come? Otto and Peter decided just what to do. Otto drove very slowly, very carefully along the road. Soon they came to the children, and sure enough, they were walking on the wrong side of the road. And they were walking in 2s and 3s. Now, the children had all heard about Otto the Auto, and they were very glad to meet him. Otto introduced Peter the Pigeon. All the children asked Peter about his big sombrero. Peter felt very important telling them about his trip to Mexico. They were having a lot of fun, but Otto was worried. He wondered how to tell these children they were walking on the wrong side of the road. Then Otto had an idea. He announced that he had a question to ask. When did you children first see Peter and me? Now, think hard, because this is very important.
We saw you when you pulled up in front of us.
Then, how would you know a car is coming if you don't see it until it passes you? The children thought and thought. Just as Otto was going to tell them they had to walk on the left, facing traffic, children singing. They were coming closer and closer.
Indian style, facing traffic all along.
Sure enough, down the road came boys and girls, walking on the left, one behind the other in single file, in the very best way to walk along the road. Now Otto was really mixed up. Why did some children walk on the left, facing traffic, and others did not? Why didn't they all know you had to walk on the left? Peter tipped his sombrero to the new boys and girls. Why do you boys and girls know that you have to walk on the left, while these children don't?
You see, Otto, we live in the country, and we know how to walk on country roads where there are no sidewalks. You have to walk on the left, facing traffic. That's the only way you can see the cars coming. But these other boys and girls are from the city, so we're singing to help them learn how to live in the country.
Sure, Otto, we're here on vacation, and this is our first day at summer camp. We're going to learn how to go on hikes and sleep in tents and live in the country. This is our first lesson. Now we know we can't walk in the country like you do in the city.
Peter nodded his head so hard that his big sombrero fell off, and the whole group laughed, and one boy picked it up and put it back on Peter's head. And Peter was happy because now he could tell about his trip to Mexico again. Soon it was time to leave. Otto and Peter watched. They saw that this time all the children walked single file along the road, this time on the left, facing traffic. Then they waved goodbye, and as they drove off, they could hear all the children singing.
Single file, Indian style, facing traffic all the while.
Did you sneak out of the house again just to meet me?
Rags, you just came out to accompany me on the harmonica, didn't you? Listen to this, Mary.
Come on, the light's still green.
Wait a minute, Mary. Let's not cross yet.
Well, why not, Jack?
Why not? By my gears and gaskets, Jack's right. Unless you saw the green light come on, you just don't know how much time there is left to cross. So you wait for the amber, the red, and then cross at the beginning of the green light.
Who said that?
He's acting as if the car were talking.
That's silly. Cars can't talk.
Well, boil my radiator. That's the trouble with people, Jack. They say something can't be so just because they never heard of it before. You can tell Rags I'm not the biting kind, Mary.
It really can talk.
How did you know our names?
It's no problem when a fella gets around as much as I do, especially since I watch for you every day.
Why do you watch for us?
Well, let's say I enjoy watching you learn and put into practice the rules of safety. Just yesterday, I saw you two at the safety demonstration on the school grounds. Remember?
You saw us then?
That's right, Mary. I was sitting across the street at the time, watching and listening, and I might add, enjoying every minute of it. You know, I was mighty pleased that when the instructor asked a question, you two were as quick as a hot spark plug with the answers. Just watching you learning the signs and rules of traffic and pedestrian safety made my carburetor skip a jump. Yes, sir. I felt like tooting my horn when I saw that you remembered those rules when you came to this intersection.
Well, we've learned that traffic lights are put up for our own protection.
Of course, they're only one kind of protection.
That's right. Can you two tell me some of the other safeguards you see around you every day?
Oh, there are lots of them.
Sure. Let's see. Traffic laws are very important. And how about policemen and crossing guards?
Drivers' hand signals often help us.
Crosswalks at street corners help to protect us. Another is safety islands in busy streets.
And don't forget school safety patrols.
I think the important thing to remember is that people on foot must be just as alert as people in cars, even with these safeguards to help us.
Maybe even more so, Jack, because sometimes the driver is careless.
You two are hitting on every cylinder. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to expect too much protection from these safeguards?
How do you mean?
Well, one example is the crosswalk. Some people seem to think those white lines on the pavement are fences. But that isn't the case at all. Those lines only serve as an added safety measure. It's necessary that you watch for cars even though you are in a crosswalk. Some drivers don't stop soon enough and get over the line. That's why you have to keep your eyes open whenever you're around traffic. At unmarked intersections where there aren't any crosswalks or guards or traffic signs, you have to be especially careful.
You know, that was one of the first things we learned at school.
We also learned in class that the most dangerous time is after school hours and on days when we don't go to school.
I'd give my spare tire if everyone would remember that. You should see some of the things I see around this town. Why, it's enough to curl my fenders. With all the places there are to play, there are still plenty of boys and girls who take chances by playing in the streets. Another thing that raises my temperature is the person who suddenly darts out in the street from between parked cars. They sure wouldn't do it if they knew how hard it is for me to stop quickly.
I guess we've all forgotten the rules at one time or another. Not long ago, I had a close call that really taught me a lesson.
What happened, Jack?
Gives me the shivers just thinking about it. It was the day I left school early because I was sick. I was on my way home and feeling kind of woozy. I guess I wasn't paying much attention to where I was going. I found out in a hurry that's one time it pays to be extra careful.
I guess you can see now, Jack, why it's important that you keep perking on all cylinders all the time.
Yes, we certainly should keep alert all of the time. I know, because of something that happened to me last week. I was going to the store just before dinner time. I was in a hurry because I wanted to get back home in time to watch my favorite television program. I started to cut across in the middle of the block. I'll never do that again. The very next day, I had to go to the store again. And that time, I went to the corner and walked across at the intersection.
I noticed you said walked across at the intersection, Mary. Can either of you tell me why that's important?
I can answer that because I saw what can happen when you don't walk.
I know we've learned that when you run, there's a bigger chance of stumbling and falling. Is that what you saw happen?
Let me tell you about it. The other day, Freddie, he's one of my pals, was in a big rush to get home. He stumbled in front of a car and came pretty close to getting hit. Another time, a buddy of mine was crossing the street and wasn't watching where he was going. Boy, he was lucky the car was coming around the corner slowly, and he didn't get hurt. I also remember seeing Joan, one of Mary's girlfriends, as she found out there's more to remember than just walking across an intersection. The light was red and Joan should have waited, but when she looked both ways along the curving road and didn't see any cars coming, she started across the street against the signal. She had to change her mind in a hurry.
When I see foolish things like that, I almost blow a gasket. After all, people have to remember that a car's a big thing. You can see it, but that doesn't mean the driver can always see you, especially when he's not expecting you.
We learned about that in our safety demonstration at school.
We also learned that a driver has more trouble seeing in the evening when it starts getting darker. And there are certain rules we should remember.
Bullseye again. I know from experience. It's not easy spotting a pedestrian after sundown. And that's why it's a wise policy to carry or wear something white. And of course, where there aren't any sidewalks, walk on the left-hand side of the road so you can see the traffic coming toward you. Even the most careful drivers can't see as clearly as they would like to at night. And on stormy nights, it's rougher than a washboard road. Drivers not only have more trouble seeing, but I know my brakes just don't stop me as quickly on wet pavement.
If we remembered our part and obeyed all the safety rules, it would make the driver's job that much easier.
And you wouldn't have to be making as many of those sudden stops.
There's one time, though, when I don't seem to be able to stop at all, and that's when I get to talking. I guess I better stop and let you get home to dinner. You must be getting hungry.
All right, Rags. We've had a lot of fun talking to you.
And I've enjoyed talking about the rules of safety. Do you two think you can remember all the things we talked about?
Think we can, Mary?
I'm sure we can. Now, let's see. Play away from traffic. Streets aren't playgrounds.
Obey traffic signals. Watch for turning cars.
Cross only at corners.
Be sure to walk across streets, because running's dangerous.
Be extra careful after school.
And on days when we don't go to school.
Good for you. Just remember that, and I'll be the happiest car on the highway.
Say, that looks like your driver coming.
Let between us. You know, some people don't believe a car can talk. Goodbye now.
Goodbye.
What's so important about a wheel? Let's watch Sally and Jane and see if we can discover a way in which a wheel would help them. This is one important way that wheels help us. It's easier to roll a heavy load than to drag it. What else is important about a wheel? How about these boys trying to build a treehouse? Is there a way in which a wheel can help them? This wheel is called a pulley, helping us lift things. That's another important way the wheel works for us. And right here in the kitchen, we can see another reason why wheels are important. Wheels make work easy. Any place, anywhere you go in this world, you'll find wheels. Wheels that help us work. Wheels that help us go places. Wheels that help us lift. Yes, even wheels that help us play. We're so used to having wheels make our work easier that it's hard to think that one time, very long ago, there were no wheels, none at all. People walked. Things had to be carried or dragged. It was very, very hard work. Who discovered the wheel, or how it was discovered, is a mystery. Where people didn't feel they needed the wheel, no one discovered it. But we do know that the wheel was discovered about 6,000 years ago. The first wheels may have been slices from the edge of a big log fastened together by a long pole called an axle. We know this from pictures carved on the walls of caves and on old monuments. You can easily see how man used this simple wheel and axle to build a cart, a chariot, a pioneer wagon, a carriage, a train, an automobile. The wheel is one of man's most important inventions. We enjoy so many good things because the wheel has made it easy for people to move from one place to another. Going to school on a bus or on a bicycle, or your father is going to work by train or car, or your mother's taking beef or a bus. The wheel makes it easier to go places. Not only does the wheel make it easier to move people, we can move things easier and cheaper so that more of us can enjoy them. A youngster in Chicago can enjoy a California orange in the middle of winter, or a road building machine made in Ohio can be moved to help build a road in New York, and then moved again to Canada to build another road. And even as we build the road, wheels do a big part of the work. Wheels are used to move the earth. Wheels are used to haul the sand and gravel. Wheels are used to build the road so that all of us can move about faster and easier. But what about the many other jobs that wheels do? I know. Let's play a guessing game. Do you know what these wheels do? They're part of the insides of a watch. Do you know what this wheel does? It's the focusing knob of a microscope. There are even wheel-like patterns in nature as seen through the microscope. I'll bet you know what these wheels do. That's right, roller skate wheels. They help us play. Do you know what this wheel does? It's the saw that cuts wood for our homes. Do you know what this wheel does? Wheels like this are used to control the flight of a rocket. What do these wheels help us do? And the wheel can be used to turn other wheels, and in that way make all work easier. So, you see, the wheel is important to us. It helps us go places faster and easier. It helps us carry things all over the world. It helps us play. That's why the wheel is so important. Can you think of other uses for wheels?
In the first month of the new term, George Laidlaw decided it was going to be a good year. He liked his teachers, he liked his subjects, and he liked his class. George Laidlaw had been nominated for the position of class secretary. Elections on Monday. One of his best friends, Tom Bertrand, was almost certain elected president. Thursday afternoon. This was the day Miss Billings would be returning the compositions they'd all written on the subject, My Summer Vacation. And what a wonderful summer it had been. George had found a new hobby, and he was looking forward to doing more about that too in the months ahead. That is to say, forward to it before this happened.
Before I return them, there's one composition I should like to read aloud. I'm going to call it Discovery, because the person who wrote it, and wrote it very nicely, discovered a new interest this summer, a fascinating one. And there's nothing more exciting in the world than discovering new things. The composition was written by George Laidlaw.
George Shakespeare.
This summer, my family went to a cottage on Green Lake, and that is where I met Dr. Robbins, who lives right next door. He is not the kind of doctor we think of, but he's a doctor of science. That is also where I met Steve Robbins, whose father is Dr. Robbins. He's going to be a scientist, too. Dr. Robbins spends every summer at the lake doing one thing. He catches butterflies. He told us there are very many different butterflies around Green Lake, and that is why he comes there. A week after we first met, Steve came over with 2 butterfly nets and asked me if I would like to go over to the Nelson farm. That is about a mile away. He was looking for a special butterfly and he wanted me to help him. I said I would walk over with him, but I wasn't going to chase any butterflies. He said okay, and it was a very nice walk to Nelson's. And that was my first expedition with Steve. By the time summer was over, I could hardly wait every afternoon to go out with Steve and catch butterflies. It was not only fun, but it was very interesting. I discovered that butterflies are very interesting to know about. I wonder how many people know that. Oh, that's too bad. I thought I'd have time to read it all. There's a lot of interesting information in this composition. I'm going to put it on the bulletin board, and you can read it yourselves later.
Boy, I can hardly wait.
Oh, I just love butterflies.
I'll return the rest of the compositions first thing in the morning. Class dismissed.
Hey, George, lend me your butterfly net sometime, eh?
I played with dolls this summer. What did you do, Larry?
George? Yes? George, I think this Dr. Robbins is very interesting to learn about.
Yes, he is. I learned a lot from him about nature and things like that.
Nature boy. Oh, I'll leave him alone.
Hey, George, wait. Why didn't you wait for me in the cloakroom?
Oh, I don't know.
I didn't know where you'd gone. Say, that was a pretty funny composition you wrote today. I mean, were you trying to be funny?
No, I wasn't.
Well, the kids who read it seemed to think it was very funny.
Well, let them, will you?
Well, 10 minutes, they said.
Oh, let's go inside.
Quicker!
But what I don't get is why you had to go and write it in the first place.
I told you. That's what I did this summer. And that's what we were supposed to write about. What we did.
You could have talked about swimming and things like that.
How was I to know she'd read it out loud like that? To everybody.
You didn't tell me about the butterfly since you came back. You told me about the boat.
Yeah.
Why didn't you write about that then?
Because the butterflies were more interesting. That's what I did most of the time. Go out with Steve.
You sound like you're crazy about chasing butterflies.
It was fun. It really was.
But nobody does that unless they're a little crazy. Or girls, maybe.
Dr. Robbins and Steve aren't crazy, and they aren't girls either.
But nobody I know does it. It seems kind of funny to me. To the kids, too.
What do they know about it?
It's a good thing for you the summer's over. I mean, you can forget the whole thing.
But I'm not going to.
Don't be crazy. People will think you're a creep chasing butterflies.
Listen, it's science, and it's very interesting.
All right, I warned you.
What do you mean?
If you want to be a creep, go ahead. George Laidlaw, he chases butterflies. That's what they'll say. They will. Remember William Stokes?
Yeah.
No one even called him Bill. All he did was lug around that great big cello or whatever it was and play with it all the time.
Maybe he liked it.
But he didn't have any friends at all.
So what?
So that's the way you'll be. Like him, William Stokes. You won't have any friends.
Why?
Well, because no one chases butterflies. That's why. It's too different. It makes people feel funny when you're different like that. William Stokes was different. Would you vote for him for class secretary?
He wouldn't be nominated.
That's what I mean. Nobody'd nominate him.
He most likely wouldn't want to be class secretary.
Oh, he'd want to be.
He'll probably be famous someday.
William Stokes?
A famous musician.
Oh. Harvey Field won't be, though.
What's he got to do with it?
Remember last year he used to go around those gray shorts? Wool shorts?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Everybody wears jeans or something like that, and Harvey goes around in those gray shorts. He sure looked funny.
Yeah, I wonder why he wore them. Everybody thought he was a real freak.
You see? It's the same thing. No one chases butterflies either.
It's not the same thing.
It is the same thing.
Papers are here. See you at the end of the route.
Okay. George, back there you said something about that you're not going to forget this butterfly stuff. I mean, you can't chase them in winter.
I was thinking of joining a club.
A butterfly club?
Studying butterflies.
Hi. Hi. Hello, Jack.
Say, I just saw Larry. He just told me about your composition.
Oh, the teacher liked it. He got a good mark.
It's a good thing somebody liked it.
What are you doing tonight?
Homework, I guess.
George! Hey, George! I've been waiting for you. Just went over to show you these butterfly nets. Dad just got them today. Nice, huh?
Yeah, they sure are.
Dad said you could have one. Save it for next summer.
Gee, that's sure nice of him.
You were a big help to him. Best assistant he's had, he said.
Oh, I didn't do much. But Steve, I'd like you to meet Tom Bertram and Jack Knowles.
Glad to know you. George, it's getting late. I have to hurry. But tomorrow night is the first meeting of the club, and Dad's taking some of the butterflies he mounted this summer. You're coming, huh?
Well...
Starts at 8. Be really interesting.
Say, George, I forgot to tell you about that hockey game on TV tomorrow night. We could see it at my house. A bunch of the guys are coming over, too.
Will you come, George? Dad'll drive us there.
Spend a week with them on their farm. Their cousins, Sandra and Ted, have also been invited. Connie wonders how they will all get there. Sandra and Ted are coming by plane. We will drive and meet them at the airport near Grandmother's. Mother decides she can best show this by drawing a simple map. She draws the length of the road between our house and the airport. Then she draws a line between Sandra and Ted's house and the airport. The distance from our house to the airport is 80 miles in one direction. The distance from Sandra and Ted's house to the airport is 400 miles in another direction. The 400-mile distance is 5 times as far as the 80-mile distance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How long will the trip take? Dad says they should make good time, since the road is fairly straight, although not exactly a straight line. There are no curved mountain roads to slow them down. They will be slowed down going through this small city. But Dad thinks they should be at the airport in 2 hours and arrive at Grandmother's in time for dinner. "80 miles to the airport. The distance of 1 mile repeated 80 times. Do you know how far a mile is? Connie does. She says that her class at school walked to a point that was a mile from school. That point was this church. Some of her classmates had said that they knew how to count miles with an automobile. But how, Daddy? Below the speedometer is an odometer. Notice the numbers with the 7 on the right. When that 7 changes to an 8, we will have gone 1 mile. Sure enough, 1 mile later, as we pass the school, we check the odometer, and the number on the right is now an 8. Would you like to see how far it is to the next town? The odometer can help us find out. We use the school as a starting point, so we copy the mileage that we read on the odometer. Now we can see and talk about other things until we reach the next town. A few minutes later, Sandra and Ted are on their way to Grandmother's, too. They enjoy looking out the plane's window at the farmlands beneath them. The country roads are very straight, and they are 1 mile apart in this region of the United States. Connie and David are now approaching Madison, the first town on their trip. You remember that they had planned to find out how far Madison is from their school. So they all look at the mileage that is on the odometer now. Mother copies it down above the mileage at the school. By subtracting, she finds that the difference is 10 miles, which is the distance between their school and Madison. Ted would like to know how fast their plane is going. The man in front tells him that they can find out by first seeing how many miles the plane goes in 1 minute. They can do this by counting the number of roads that the plane shadow crosses during the time it takes for the second hand on a watch to go all the way around once. During this minute, the plane went 4 miles. So the man shows Ted and Sandra that if they go 4 miles in 1 minute, then in 60 minutes, or 1 hour, they will go 60 times 4 miles, which is 240 miles an hour. Meanwhile, Connie and David are going 60 miles an hour, which is the same as 60 miles in 60 minutes, or 1 mile in 1 minute. But they will slow down for curves, heavy traffic, and towns. Now, how about a guessing game? See that big building on the left of the road? How far do you think it is? A mile is Connie's guess. What do you think, David? 2 miles? At this point, they check the odometer. Mother is the referee. The building is a grain elevator. Whose guess do you think was best? Mother says both guesses were equally good because the distance was 1.5 miles. So Mother calls it a tie. You might like to guess distances on trips with your family sometimes. It's time for Sandra and Ted's plane to arrive. Do you suppose this is it? During the rest of the way, the cousins talk about the things they did on their trips this morning. They learn that it took Sandra and Ted less time to fly 400 miles than it did Connie and David to drive 80 miles. There is Grandmother and Grandfather's house. Next time you trip, what can you do to learn how far?
Report is a little different. I miss the book reports.
It's different, but I think I like it. I can make a report on something that really interests me.
Yeah, but I'm interested in sports. Can I write about that?
Well, I think so. Let's see, the reports are on occupations. You could write about, we'll say, the life of a professional football player.
Say, that's an idea. But what are you going to write about?
Well, I haven't really decided yet. I'll have to think it over. Well, I'll see you around.
Dan would have to think it over. Thinking it over was the first step in preparing his class report. His assignment, to make a report on an occupation. What occupation? It should be something that would interest him and his class. At dinner, Dan was thinking it over. Dinner is a real family gathering at his house. Maybe Dan could get some help in picking a topic. Maybe he should ask Dad. He usually has a suggestion. Or maybe he should ask his brother. Pete must have had class reports to do. But no, thought Dan, this is the time to think for myself. Develop one of my own ideas. The next day, Dan began to narrow down the possible subjects. He thought of things he liked to do and subjects in which he had special interest. Railroads had always interested him. He even made model trains. There were all sorts of occupations in that field. He liked sports of all kinds, but then his friend Ted was probably going to report on that. He liked automobiles and mechanical things. He did. But what about his audience? How many of them would be interested in the life of a mechanic? Dan wanted a subject that he could make interesting to everyone in the class, just as he hoped their reports would interest him. Dan also wanted a topic that would make the work of preparing the report more interesting for him. Look, a farm. Dan knew he had found his topic. The library would be his base of operation, and the card catalog his first source of information. Under the subject listing, he found available books that might help him with his report. Dan was careful to pick books that were really informative, rather than any literature that presented a slanted viewpoint. He kept a list of the books he used. This is called a bibliography. Besides including this list in his report, Dan would give credit in a footnote whenever he directly quoted an author. Magazine articles occupied Dan's attention on another trip to the library. He found these by consulting the Reader's Guide, which indexes articles appearing in magazines and other regular publications. These, too, he included in his bibliography. Then Dan discovered another source of information, films that gave him a real insight into the life of a farmer. At home, by checking the newspapers, Dan found there were many radio programs that could help him with his research.
Makers of the world's finest chicken feed present the Farmer's Almanac of the Air. First, the weather report, then a quick rundown of grain prices. After, this message of interest to every farmer who wants to increase...
But still, Dan felt his research was not complete.
Say, Dad, I'm making a class report on the life of a farmer. How can I go to a farm and find out what it's really like?
I don't know, son. There are no farms close by. Maybe you could work on a farm this summer.
You don't understand, Dad. My report's got to be in next week. I just have the weekend off. A couple of days.
Well, let's see. Your Uncle Jack has a farm, but he's pretty busy with his family and all the work and everything.
Well, I could help him out, couldn't I?
I'm afraid you wouldn't be much help to him.
Well, I'll try, Dad. Honest, I will.
Well, all right. You call him up, and if he says all right, I'll let you go.
Swell, Dad. Excuse me. Information, please.
So Dan found himself up on the farm for the weekend. This was certainly different from life in the city. People were spread out more. Just when Dan thought the day's work was all done, there were a lot more chores. He tried everything, though not always with great success. When he could, he took pictures that would be part of his report. It was a long day, but after dinner, Dan made some notes on the day's activities, little incidents he might use in his report. But tomorrow is another day, and Uncle Jack's family went to bed early. For once, Dan wanted to go to bed. In one day, he had learned quite a bit about the life of a farmer. The next day was Sunday, and although the farmers still had morning chores and some distance to travel, the country church was well attended. Soon after church, it was time for Dan to go home. He had had an interesting visit to his uncle's farm. He had made a personal investigation that was fun for him and would add life to his report. To guide him in preparing his class report, Dan had a checklist. It was time to look it over. Choose a subject. Well, remember, Dan had done that. He had almost asked for help. But in the end, his idea was his own. Think of your interest and your audience. Dan's topic was one that interested him, and he felt he could make it interesting to everyone in his class. Next, gather information. He had certainly done that. He'd made frequent trips to the library for research of all kinds, from books, magazines, and films. And he'd made a personal investigation of his topic to give him a further knowledge of the subject. Organize presentation. Now, Dan had a week to do that. As he started to think about organizing his material, he began to feel he would need the week. At first, what he had learned came to him in jumbled, unorganized thoughts. It was going to take work. Dan was glad he had had experience in outlining and revising outlines, organizing material in a clear, effective manner. Because Dan was interested in his work, and because he knew he had done it well, he had a real sense of accomplishment. And he actually was looking forward to the day he would make his report. There are many ways to make a class report. Could you organize and present a report now that you've seen Dan go through the process? How would you present your class report?
This is the room where we go to school. We're all friends here, and we do many interesting things together. See the boy in the bright shirt? His name is George. This morning, it's George's turn to guess what? Do you know what these animals are? They're chipmunks. Or you may have heard them called ground squirrels. We all take turns feeding our chipmunks and cleaning the cage, just as we take turns wiping the blackboard and doing other things. Our teacher is Miss Graham, and the boy she's talking to, his name is Jimmy. It's his first day in our school. His family has just moved to our town, and he has been going to a different school in the city far away. Now, if you were a new boy or girl in school, what would you want to do first thing? Miss Graham knows. Jimmy wants to meet the other boys and girls. Miss Graham wants George to show Jimmy about the room and help him learn how we do things so that our room will be his room, too. The chipmunks are fun. But George wants Jimmy to see some other things. This is where we keep supplies that are used by all of us. Here comes Tony to put some things away. In our room, there's a certain place for keeping each thing, so that we'll always know where to find what we need. And we always put things back as soon as we finish using them. Do you know why? Suppose we did not put things back. Why, then very soon the cabinet would look like this. just as bare as old Mother Hubbard's cupboard. But of course, we don't let that happen. We put things away where they belong. That will be easy for Jimmy, because in his other school, they were just as careful with their supplies. Listen. It's time to sit down. And this will be Jimmy's seat. Yes, Jimmy will sit at this table with Tony, Vivian, and Gretchen. Already Jimmy feels that he's getting to know some of the other children, that our room is his room. That's the way we like it. It's number time, and one child from each table is going to the cabinet to get the bags of counters. Jimmy wonders whether Miss Graham will teach arithmetic the way the teachers did at his other school. Here's a bag of counters for Vivian, and one for Gretchen, and one for Tony, and one for Jimmy. That's the way we divide things evenly. But look at Jimmy. He seems to know just what to do. This is the way they learn counting at his other school. And he's going to show these new boys and girls how much he knows. He's going to be the very first one. Why, what's the matter? Uh-oh. No one else has even opened a bag. Maybe Jimmy doesn't know so much. Not about how things are done at this school. Jimmy hopes that none of the other children see him. They might tease him about trying to show off. Uh-oh. Tony does see him. But look, Tony will pretend he never saw a thing. He's a real friend to Jimmy. And what is Miss Graham saying? Today, as part of the arithmetic lesson, she's going to show a moving picture. A picture about counting. Now to get ready to show the picture. Everyone helps. Everyone has something to do. Everyone but Jimmy. He'd like to pitch in and help, but what to do? Tony has the answer. Jimmy's not left out. Tony is a friend, and already Jimmy is hoping that soon he'll be able to do something for Tony. Miss Graham will put the film on the projector. It doesn't take long to do even a big job when everybody helps. George is ready to turn out the lights. And now, as Miss Graham starts the projector, let's see and hear part of the picture on counting.
With these blocks, Frank is building a tower. See how many blocks he puts in the tower. Can you count them?
6.
That's right, 6. Now see if you can count the chickens in the pen. That's not so easy.
7.
The answer is 7.
Now the picture's over and it's time for recess. We're proud of the playground at our school. Jimmy likes it too. There's so much to do. The slide is fun, especially when we line up so that everyone who wants to slide gets a turn. There's a ball game. Over in a safe place so the children who are not playing won't be hurt. What else? The teeter-totters? Not for Jim. Now he sees what he's looking for. Jimmy brought his marbles. He's not the least bit afraid to ask if he may get in the game. He's found out that at our school we like to do things together and be friends with one another. It's Jimmy's turn. Attaboy, Jimmy. Good shot. Here's Tony. He might want to get in the game. Tony would like to, all right, but he didn't bring his marbles today. Here's Jimmy's chance to do something for Tony. It's not a very big thing to lend a few marbles, but it can make the other fella feel mighty good. And it can make you feel good, too. That's the sort of spirit we have at our school. Remember? When we go to school, we take turns doing things that help everyone. We try to make new boys and girls feel that they're really not new at all. We keep each thing in a certain place so we'll always know where to find it. We try not to hurt anyone's feelings. That's one of the best ways to make friends. And we all want to have friends and be friends, don't we? When there's a job to do, we all pitch in and help. That way it doesn't take long, and it's fun. We take turns at play just as we take turns at work. That's the fair way to do things. And we share things with each other. Our marbles and our fun and our friendship. And why shouldn't we? It's our school, isn't it?
One fine day, as Otto the Auto was driving along the street, he saw Betty and her brother Jack and Jack's pet turtle, whose name was Timothy.
Otto, this is my brother Jack. My name's Jack Brown, and my turtle's name is Timothy Brown, and we live on Main Street.
Every day Jack learns something new, Otto. Now he knows his name and his street, and if he ever gets lost, people will know he belongs to us.
Just then, Timothy the turtle started across the street, ever so slowly, because turtles can't move very fast. There was a screech of brakes, and when Otto and Betty and Jack looked, there was Timothy, right in front of a big car, and his head was nowhere in sight.
He does that all the time, Otto. He gets so scared when he crosses the street, he pulls his head in, and then he can't see the cars.
Oh, I'm glad that car stopped in time, Timothy.
Timothy stuck his head out of his shell and started back for the sidewalk. The driver waited until Timothy was safely on the sidewalk before he drove on.
What are we going to do about Timothy? We have to teach him how to cross the street.
But, Jack, even if we teach Timothy, he won't be able to cross. He can't walk fast enough.
You're right, Betty. I'll bet that light could change 100 times before Timothy could get across.
Jack and Betty and Otto thought and thought what to do about Timothy. Timothy just pulled his legs and head into his shell and went to sleep.
I know, Otto. We can teach Jack to cross, and then he can carry Timothy.
That's it. Teach me how to cross the street, and I can be careful for both of us.
That's a good idea, Betty. Of course, Otto the Auto was very glad that Jack wanted to learn how to cross the street. That can be Jack's lesson for today. Jack, what do you know about crossing streets?
Well, Otto, I watch Betty every day. Here's what she does. She always goes to the corner. She always stops and waits for the green light. She waits for all traffic to stop. And she is up and down the street. Then she walks across between the white lines.
Jack's a good brother, Otto. He's noticed lots of things I do when I cross the street. But he left out one very important thing, didn't he, Otto?
Yes, he did, and I know just how we can show Jack what that one important thing is. Let's go to the toy store. The toy store manager took Jack and Timothy and Betty past the dolls and bikes and toy animals. Timothy stretched his neck as far as it would go when he saw the toy turtles. They stopped at an empty table. Then the manager put toy houses on the table, and a sidewalk, and a street, and a toy traffic light, and he gave a small car to Betty. Betty put Timothy down on the make-believe sidewalk. He wasn't afraid because there were no cars whizzing by. Timothy stuck his head out and looked up and down the street, and then he started to cross. Just as he did, Betty wheeled the toy car around the corner and right over Timothy.
Betty! I'm glad Timothy has a hard shell.
Timothy wasn't hurt, of course. But was he surprised?
Now I know. Timothy looked up and down the street, but he didn't stretch his neck around and look for turning cars. That's the one important thing I forgot. I don't have a stretched neck like Timothy, but I can turn my head and look over my shoulder for turning cars before I step off the curb.
Jack and Betty and Otto and Timothy started back to Main Street. When they came to the corner, Jack said,
I always go to the corner. I stop and wait for the green light. I look in all directions. I look over my shoulder for turning cars. I see that no cars are coming. And now we can cross the street.
Betty looked at Jack and Otto looked at Jack.
My name is Jack Brown, and this is Timothy Brown, and we live on Main Street, and I watch for turning cars.
You and Timothy should be safe now. I hope all boys and girls will watch for turning cars. Otto the Auto turned around, and there he saw Billy with a brand new tricycle. Billy, what a beautiful new tricycle!
It's a birthday present, Otto. I wanted a brand new tricycle for my birthday, and that's just what I got.
Aren't you a lucky boy, Billy?
You bet I am, Otto. Watch me, Otto!
And before Otto could say another word, Billy was pedaling down the sidewalk as fast as he could. At first, Otto laughed because anyone could see Billy was having a very good time. But then Otto became frightened. Billy just missed Mrs. Jones, and then he drove right past a driveway without stopping, and he turned the corner without signaling. 3 wrong things right in a row. Otto blinked his eyes. How could he teach Billy how to ride his tricycle safely? Just then, Otto saw Pepper the dog. "Ow, ow," said Pepper, which meant, Otto, how are you? I'm fine, Pepper, but I'm worried. And Otto showed Pepper how Billy was riding his tricycle. Barked Pepper, which meant, why, Otto, if that's the way Billy rides his tricycle, just imagine how he'll ride a bicycle or drive a car. Maybe you can help, Pepper. Find Billy and play with him. You can jump up and down in front of him and sit on the back of his bicycle and bark. Then Billy will get so mixed up, he won't be able to ride. Said Pepper, which meant, what good will that do, Otto? Well, while you stop Billy from taking any more chances, I'll get all the other boys and girls together. We'll show Billy how smart riders ride their tricycles. Pepper hopped back on the back of Billy's tricycle. He barked. And he jumped up and down in front of Billy, and he ran round and round the trike. Billy was so mixed up he couldn't ride. Just then, Otto came along. It's all right now, Pepper. Everything's ready.
What's ready, Otto?
Billy, I know your tricycle is brand new, and you want to know how to drive it safely and courteously. So all the other boys and girls with bikes and trikes are going to show you how.
Do you mean I wasn't riding my tricycle right, Otto?
You'll see, Billy. Come along to the playground. First of all, Mary will show you what to do when you drive past a driveway. Mary stopped and checked to be sure that no cars were backing up. Now, John will demonstrate what to do when you're going to turn or stop. John drove out on his bicycle and gave the left turn signal.
Left turn!
The right turn signal.
Right turn!
And the stop signal.
Stop! Gosh, I didn't know there were signals to give. Why, it's just like driving a car. Otto, it's just like being grown up.
The last part of our lesson has already been given. The best place to ride your tricycle is in the playground. There are 2 reasons why. You won't frighten or hurt someone, and you'll be safe playing away from traffic.
But Otto, suppose there's no one around to take me to the playground. I can't cross all the streets by myself. Does that mean I can't ride my tricycle?
No, Billy. I think you can figure out what to do then, can't you?
I know, Otto. I can ride my trike in the afternoon before the people come home from work. Then there are only 2 or 3 people who walk down our street, and I can be very careful and stop when they go by.
That's a very good idea, Billy. And what will you do when you stop?
I'll give the stop signal. I'm going home right now and practice those signals.
So off they went. And this time, Billy did everything right on his tricycle.
A new baby's an exciting addition to the family. But there are problems, too.
He's always asleep. When's he going to be any fun? All he ever does is eat and sleep.
Yes, eat and sleep. When you were a baby, you had to depend on your mother for all the things that you needed. She had to feed you, to bathe you, to put you down to sleep. As you grow older, you learn to do more and more things for yourself. Some of these things you do so often that they become habits. Everybody has habits. Dad likes to read his newspaper every evening in this same chair. It's one of his habits. Habits are things you do naturally without having to think about them. Martha first had to think each step when she tied a bow knot. Now she can do it easily and quickly. Regular habits make daily living much easier since they help us do things without having to think about them. Some of the habits you learn now may stay with you all your life.
All right, children. It's time to get ready for bed.
I'm almost through with this chapter, Mother. It's time for bed, Susie. You go right to sleep now.
Getting ready for bed at a regular time is one of the most important habits you can learn. A quiet hour or 2 before bedtime is part of this habit. It makes you feel relaxed and sleepy, ready for bed. Washing up is part of the going to bed habit. Any regular routine before bedtime helps you feel sleepy. Hanging up your clothes can be part of this routine. They'll air out overnight and be neat for tomorrow. Wearing the right kind of night clothes is important. David's pajamas fit him loosely and don't bind him around the waist. David likes to open his window when it isn't too cold for fresh air, but he's careful not to sleep in a draft. Of course, Martha has her own habits. Instead of opening her window, she gets fresh air by opening her door a bit.
Good night, David. Good night, sis.
David's bed is comfortable and the mattress isn't too soft. The covers on his bed are warm without being heavy. And so David's ready for bed at just about the usual time. Of course, he sometimes stays up later, but that doesn't happen often enough to change his going to bed habits. Now to sleep. Some people go right to sleep, others take longer. Because David has regular sleeping habits, he usually drops off very quickly. David has probably never stopped to think what a wonderful thing sleep is. In sleep, the muscles of the body are relaxed. It's the most perfect way to relax that we have. Our breathing is slower and deeper when we sleep. The body's temperature is lower.
Even the heart beats more slowly. The whole body is resting. To rest all our muscles, we turn in our sleep. Some people turn often, others not so often, but we all do it. It's a normal part of sound, healthy sleep. Dreams are normal too. Often they're suggested by things around us while we sleep. Dreams don't seem to make much sense, do they? That's because the brain is resting along with the body, so it's less alert when you sleep. After a good night's sleep, you usually wake up easily and naturally. The alarm hasn't rung yet. David finds that he usually wakes up before it goes off. Of course, it takes him a little while to get fully awake. You're never at your best until at least an hour or two afterwards. That's one reason why getting up early is so important. There's plenty of time for breakfast, too. Breakfast is an important meal that shouldn't be missed. If you usually go to bed early enough, you usually wake up early, too. You can start the day in a pleasant, unhurried way. It's more fun for you that way, and more fun for the rest of the family, too. David and Martha enjoy their mornings, and that helps them enjoy the whole day. As the day goes on, you get more and more value from your regular sleeping habits. Plenty of sleep helps you to be bright and alert to the very end of the day. But what about bad sleeping habits? George just doesn't get enough sleep. Now in the afternoon, he's tired. It's hard for him to pay attention in class. When the teacher calls on him, George just can't seem to remember things that he really ought to know. George doesn't realize it, but his main trouble is bad sleeping habits. Last night, for instance...
No, Muggsy. Don't rub me out. I didn't do it. Honest, I didn't.
No rat's gonna squeal on me. You know too much, Limpy.
You know I wouldn't sing, Muggsy. We've been pals too long.
Slat saw you in the DA's office.
Sure, I was there, but they didn't get nothing out of me.
Then why was the coppers around here today?
I don't know, Muggsy. I don't know.
You squealed, that's why. You put the finger on me.
You can't do it, Muggsy. You can't. You can't. Oh.
Yes, George has bad sleeping habits. And even when he finally does get into bed, he finds it hard to go to sleep. That's because he hasn't formed the habit of going to sleep at a regular time each night. And it's just as hard for him to wake up in the morning.
George! George! Get up, George.
He's still tired because he hasn't had enough sleep.
Hey, Mom! Where are my books? On the mantel, dear. George, close the door.
The morning starts badly, and the whole day goes badly when you get too little sleep too often. And even after class is over, you keep on paying the penalty for bad sleeping habits. You don't have much fun when you're tired and low in energy. Lack of sleep makes it hard for you to do your best. You just can't seem to get into the game and have fun the way the other fellas do. You're irritable and cross, hard to get along with. People don't like you, and you don't like yourself when you're like that. Probably neither David nor George realize how important their sleeping habits are to the way they enjoy their waking hours. Going to bed at a regular time each night makes it easier for you to go right off to sleep instead of lying awake long into the night. You wake up easily and naturally without having to be dragged out of bed. And most important, your day starts right and stays right. Both David and Martha have learned that good sleeping habits help you get the most out of everyday living.